Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Brian, Mr. Smith Kitchen, as always. Today, I thought we'd make some salsa. This is we can our salsa and have for years. The recipe I use is 3 generations old, but it's a good salsa. I swear by it. We make it every year and have for as long as I can remember. And it's kind of versatile because you can make a little bit of it, a lot of it. You can serve it fresh. You can let it sit overnight and serve it then. You can make it a couple days in advance. You can can it. It's just a good, plain old salsa. I never had any complaints about it. It's not hard to make, a little time consuming, but not hard to make. A lot of prep work, especially I double batch mine, so it takes a fair amount of work, but it doesn't have to. If nothing else, you can, especially if you're making it for a fresh salsa or a day old salsa, or a sit overnight salsa for a party the next day or whatever. You can make it as little or as much as you want and adjust all the ingredients to suit your size that you'll need, the amount you'll need, things like that. If you're canning it, on the other hand, like we do, you want to be kind of diligent with the amounts you use. Well, you don't want to kind of be, you do want to be diligent with the amounts you use to ensure that your acidity level is good in your salsa for canning, so it doesn't go bad when we process it. But like I said, I've never had an issue with this. It does pretty much follow all the rules. And I'm a pretty firm believer in following the rules. Once you learn the rules, and then you can play when it comes to canning. But until then, you kind of want to follow a tested recipe, or follow the rules. Tested recipes are the best, and on YouTube, even in some canning books, they can vary a little, and some of them aren't really best practice or even fair practice. And like I said, we're going to do a video on those, on some of that stuff down the road, to kind of go over what is best practice and where's the best place to start. I would like to think my channel is the best place, one of the best places, better places at any rate to start. But I mean, there are others out there that follow the rules. But canning books are probably the best option. The Ball Blue Book is probably the best learning tool with tested recipes that they have, or the National Society for Food Preservation is another one. Or any of the sites that are part of that. But every big major college has a food home canning department. I can't remember what they're called right now. But anyhow, so those are things to look for. But anyhow, this salsa, it's got a bit of a kick to it. You can play with it a little bit. This calls for jalapenos, which I use, but you can use any pepper you like in it. But it's also got tomatoes and bell peppers and garlic. There's all kinds of stuff, and everything we're putting in this today has, once again, come out of our garden, which will be awesome. So let me get you down here to the counter, and we'll start prepping. All right, hold on for me 1 second. Okay, we're down here at the counter, and some things you'll need. You'll need a bowl. You're going to need a stock pot of some sort, and I'm just going to use my 6-quart stock pot and my smaller one, and because it'll hold a double batch. A knife. Now, when it comes to knives, I'm using my Dexter knives, which are professional knives. Everybody has their own preference for knives, but any knife you use, make sure it's sharp. Sharp is the key. Dull can get you hurt. The other thing you'll need is a recipe, and in this case, I don't have it written down in my notebook. If you're new to my channel, I always write things down in my recipes down in my notebook, and if we like them, we pitch them. If we don't, if we like them, we keep them. If we don't, we pitch them or modify them to make them work if it's something we think is workable. This particular recipe, like I said, it's been in our family, I know, 3 generations, well, Chris's family, and it's out of a cookbook that my mother-in-law actually had written, and it's a good, solid family cookbook. It's got some of our family and some of her friends' recipes from, over the decades, and this recipe is amazing. So we put it in here, and she put some of my changes to it in here, and it didn't change much by any means, but this is a solid recipe. So first thing we need to do is prep. You'll need a bowl to put your your stuff in, and you want to make sure it's if you have one, an 8-cup bowl. If not, that's fine too, because the minimum of things that we're going to prep that will go in here is 1 cup, and that's the jalapenos. The maximum is 8 cups, which is the tomatoes. So when I dice up my tomatoes, other than the cilantro and garlic, everything is from the garden. How big or small you make your diced, you dice up your stuff is up to you. And if you like a super smooth salsa, you can throw it in a blender or a mixer. Either way. So when I cut my tomatoes, I cut the ends off, because you don't want the top. You don't want that right there. That it's hard and it's yucky. You want to be able to see the meat down inside of it. And if you watch the saucing video, I'll show you what I mean by the meat, because I talk about how aromas, because that's all I use, is a lot meatier and not so juicy. See how it didn't get juice everywhere? And that's all meat through there. And you got your seed pouch right there, and then if you can see that little hole right there. So I just simply cut mine in half, and then I cut them long ways, front to back, because I like mine to be kind of chunky, but not horribly chunky. And then I just dice it up just like such. And I'm going to need 8 cups of tomatoes. Well, in my case, I'm going to need 16, because I want to do a double batch. Now, when you prep, make a claw. That way the knife can ride against your fingers like such as you move back, and you control the size of your whatever it is you're cutting. So let me go ahead and get these cut, and then we'll move on to the next thing we need to prep. Alright, so we got our tomatoes diced up. 8 cups right there. Finely diced tomatoes. I actually did 16, but we're just going to put those in the stock pot here. We're going to keep using this one bowl to minimize dishes. But if you ever wonder what 16 cups of tomatoes look like, right there. Which 16 cups is roughly 8.5 pounds of tomatoes if you're using Romas. If you're not, then I don't know, but I know with Roma tomatoes, it's about 8.5 pounds. So the next thing we're going to need to put in here for a normal recipe of this, not doubled, is 1.5 cups of green peppers. I'm going to cut up 3. So, and when you cut up green peppers, they're relatively straightforward. You're just going to cut the top off, just like such. Now I save this ring and chop it up. And then you can cut off the bottom, just like such. And then I just reach in here and break the sides off and pull the stem out, or pull the, I can't remember what it's called now, but the seed holder. It's similar to placenta, but it's not placenta. And that we can get rid of. Get this bottom off right and cut it close enough. And then all I'm going to do is cut this open, spread it out, and then I'm going to cut the ribs off. It has a proper name too, but I, for the life of me, cannot remember what it's called. Because these are the parts you want to get rid of on jalapenos also. So after I get those taken off, like such, I'll just flip it over. Make sure you wash your vegetables before you use them. At least rinse them off. I mean, no soapy water and all that stuff. You don't want soap and all that. I mean, I guess you could, but I just rinse mine off, give them a good washing, light scrubbing. That way I know I don't use pesticides in the garden, but there's been bugs crawling all around them and things like that. Even though they're beneficial critters, they're still critters all the same, and we don't want that. So we're going to cut these into strips, just like such. Now, there's probably 1,000,001 different ways to skin a cat, so to speak. This is how I dice up my peppers at any rate. And this way you can control the thickness. Now, I'm not making them really thick, fairly thin, not shoestring thin, but close enough. And then I just grab a little stack at a time, and I just dice them up into little pieces. That way I get some fairly even pieces. I heard once in culinary school, when you're dicing things, they actually grade you on everything being equal size, which is why I would never make it in culinary school. But that's just pretty much how I dice up my green peppers. Now you know how I dice up a tomato and a green pepper. So let me get these done, and then we'll move into the next ingredient. Okay, so we got our green peppers diced up, 3 cups worth, well, a cup and a half if you're only making a single batch. And we'll get those in with the tomatoes. That way they can start making friends with each other. Just like such. So the next thing we need in here is 2.5 cups of onions. I need 5 because I'm doubling it. But 2.5 cups of onions. So you got a cup and a half of green peppers, 8 cups of tomatoes, 2.5 cups of onion. And I'm just using a standard yellow onion. And much like with the peppers, you can use any variety you like, whatever suits your fancy. So like with the green peppers, they don't have to be green. We've done yellow peppers, orange, golden orange peppers. We've done red, a combination of all 4. So when I dice my onions, some people will leave that end piece on there, the root end on it. I don't. I cut both ends off, and then I take this top layer off to get the paper off of it. Now, there was some controversy a while back on Facebook, and I just simply peeled this outer layer off. Let me get this off while I talk. So there was some controversy on Facebook a while back about the outsides of your root vegetables, well, vegetables in general, that you peel, like carrots, onions, potatoes, things of that nature. And it was based around chicken broth. They say that you should not, and you should not say, depending on who you talk to, you shouldn't really save the paper outside of it, although this has like huge nutritional value. We save a portion of our scraps, and I freeze them, and I put them in my chicken broth when I boil my chickens to make the bones and all that, the scraps, to make chicken broth with, to help add flavor. The discussion was, is it good for you? I mean, as far as like bacteria, things of that nature that are on it. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, because there isn't any study done on it, it doesn't hurt you. I know several people that do use them when making chicken broth, or at least the scraps and whatnot, that do use them. I also use them when I make my chicken broth. Now, there are others that will tell you that that's not proper. And they may be right, because there is no studies done on it. I will just tell you, we've been making chicken broth for years that way and have never had a problem with it. Now, I will also save, like when I make a roast, we do roasted chicken, any vegetables that we put in it, I'll save those. What we don't eat, I save them, freeze them, and I also put that in the chicken broth to help add flavor, get them the vitamins and nutrients. So, if you make your own chicken broth and you use them, now would be the time to save them. If you don't, take them out to the garden, or your flower beds. All right, so I peel it, I cut it in half, I lay it on its side, and then I take my knife and I make a slit, depending on the size of the onion, I make a slit or 2 crossways like this, and then I come back over on the top and I cut almost to the end, like such. And then I come across this way, and I go down. This way I get diced. Yeah, they're diced. They're almost minced. And you can also, by doing this, I mean, you can control the width of it. How many times you could put 3 or 4 different slices in going across it. it just really depends on how big you want them. But that is how I dice my onions. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get our onions diced up, and then we'll move on. All right, so we got our 2.5 cups of onions cut, or 5. I hope that's not confusing. I'll just quit telling you what I'm actually doing and tell you the recipe. So we got our 2.5 cups of onions cut. The next thing we need to dice up is our jalapenos. So in the meantime, we'll get all these in here to play. Yeah, they're already starting to mingle. They're going to get a chance to mingle a lot. Now we need a cup of jalapenos. Here's where I recommend you find some gloves to wear. Because if you don't, you will get the juice on your fingers, and man, you'll inevitably rub your eyes, or touch somebody, and it'll, transfer the heat, and I mean, it can just be a mess. So, if possible, wear gloves. So, with jalapeno, you can use any pepper you like. If you like banana peppers instead, great. If you like more heat, I've done this with habaneros, hatch peppers, banana peppers, ghost peppers, Trinidad's. We've made super hot salsas. We've made mild salsas. It's completely up to you. But I will leave the seeds in most of these, not all of them. And I got a variety of sizes here, from itty bitty little ones to big ones. Now, I did learn with jalapenos, the green ones are actually hotter than red ones. So if you let these sit and turn red, they won't be as potent. Reason for that is it's aging, and so it will go red, because in nature red means danger. But when they're green, they keep animals from eating the animals won't eat the jalapenos because they know it's hot, because the seeds are hot. So all I do to do my jalapenos is I cut the top off of it, and on these bigger ones I'm going to de-seed them a little bit. So all I do is just take my finger in there like such and pull the seed and the stem out just like that. You could also use a spoon, but I'm just use my fingers because I'm not that hard pressed to get everything out. But the seeds and the rib is what holds the heat in them. So then after I do that, I just take it, flatten it out as best I can. You can cut the end off of it too. And I basically do the same thing as I do the bell peppers. I slice them long ways, just like such. And like I said, you'll want to wear gloves. You don't have to, but you'll remember to wear them the next time. I know there's been a few times I haven't. And then I just cut them across, so that way I get a nice diced look. And we're going to do up 1 cup of these. Okay, so real quick, I figured I'd show you these instead of just using your fingers. If you just take a spoon, any spoon, I have a clear plastic spoon if you can't see it, and I just pop it in right there where the rhizome is, and that way I can just simply slide it across there, and it pulls out the seed pod, and then I just scrape out the rest of that rib like such. Alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and get these finished up, and then we'll move on. Alright, we got our jalapenos chopped, our 1 cup of jalapenos. We'll go ahead and get those in the sauce, in the mix. Get them in there real quick. Stir that up. Now, we got 2 things left to put in here, 2 things left to chop up. It feels like we've been chopping stuff forever. The last thing is 6 cloves of garlic, just like that. Now, you can see it's got the paper on the outside. They're they can be kind of a pain to get off, but all I do is, first thing I do is I cut the root end off, and you can peel them. I also have a little rubber tube thing I can stick it in and rub it together, and that'll take the peel off. But in this case, since I'm just going to dice them up real fine, I'm going to take my knife, lay it flat over top of it, hammer it like that, and I can just peel the paper off of it. And it's okay that it's coming up in chunks. We're going to dice them. So, and then after you get that, see, paper off. And I'm leaving my gloves on because garlic gets sticky. But then all you got to do is just chop them up, or dice them up, or however big you want them. That's the beauty of making salsa. You make it as chunky or as not chunky as you want. So we just chop these up real quick. And then we can throw these in the mix as we go. We don't have to measure them because we know it's just 6 cloves, so to speak. There's that. Alright, I'll get these done and then we'll cut up the last thing, which is cilantro. Got our garlic chopped up. Scrape that up here, put it in the pot. Give it a good stir. I mean, we're going to give this a good stir when we move, after we get done chopping everything up and putting everything in. So the last thing we got to put in there is some cilantro. You also have the option to put in Italian parsley. Some of it's for color, but we like the taste of cilantro. If you don't, you can use the parsley. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the stems off of it. I only need 1/3 of a cup, which by the time we're done chopping this up, it will be about 1/3 of a cup. So we'll go ahead and get this chopped up. And all we do to chop it up is just, give it a good chop. Got the cilantro chopped up. Now, obviously, it looks like more than 1/3 of a cup. It is because I'm, like I said prior to, several times I've doubled the recipe. So I've got about 2/3 a cup here. And we'll get that put in there. Now, like I said, if you don't like the taste of cilantro, which are people out there that don't, it can get overbearing pretty quick. You can use Italian parsley, you can use regular parsley, but you want to put some green in there at some point. Alright, so we are done cutting everything up. So let me get cleaned up here right quick, and we will move on to just ingredients we got to put in. Alright, I'll be back in 1 second. Alright, we're in the home stretch. So, got everything cleaned up, got the stock pot out of the sink. Here's where we stand so far. That's all our fruits of labor. Now, that was a lot, and it took me about 1 hour and 10 minutes to get all that chopped. Now I'm making a double batch. So I would plan on 1 hour to get the first overall step done. That would be dicing all your stuff, adding your ingredients. So that being said, we'll move on to the next step, which is the last thing we have to do for today. We got everything chopped up. So to this, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of black pepper. Pitch that in there. And you can adjust that if you'd like. You're going to add 2 tablespoons of cumin. Alright, powdered cumin. And if you like cumin, put a little more in there. Dry spices, you can use as much as a little as you like, even with canning. Alright, but that just holds true to dry spices. Fresh spices are a whole other ballgame. So we got our 2 tablespoons of black pepper, our 2 tablespoons of cumin in there. Now we're going to add 1/8 of a cup of canning salt, or in this case, kosher salt. If you're not canning this, you could also just use table salt. Now, I don't have a 1/8 measuring cup, so I had to go with a gram weight, hence a scale. And I don't ever preach that with cooking normally, or canning in that case. But in this case I am, because most people don't have a 1/8 cup measuring cup. It's 36 grams, roughly. So about 35 grams, 36 grams of salt is 1/8 of a cup. So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. And the salt's important. It does a couple different things. We're going to use it to draw out the moisture in the vegetables, your tomatoes, your onions, and all that, which will give it a nice, juiciness to it. But that is a fair amount of salt. So to that, we're going to add 1/3 a cup, 1/3 a cup of sugar. All right, so we'll put that in there. I know you're thinking, wow, Brian, that's crazy. Sugar and salsa, absolutely. It helps balances things. It helps with the heat of the peppers. It helps with, you got all that acid in there from all the tomatoes and the onions and all that. Helps balance that out. So, and especially after we put the next 2 ingredients in. The last 2 ingredients, if you're just making a single batch, it's a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, a small can. All right, I'm using a big can because it's almost 30 ounces. It's 29 ounces. But who's, that ounce isn't really going to make that much of a difference. And we'll get all of that out there. No tomato sauce left behind. Got that. And then you're going to need, even for just a single batch, you'll need one 12-ounce can of tomato paste. I think tomato paste is kind of strong myself, so even with a double batch, I only use one 12-ounce can. It's completely up to you on that aspect. So we'll get that in there. Oh, and I lied, we got one more ingredient and I didn't get it out. And I almost always forget this until the very end. And I don't know why, because I've made this a million times. You think I'd just naturally know by now. Alright, got our tomato paste in there. And then the last ingredient, as soon as I get it out of the fridge here, is lime juice. Alright, let me go get measuring apparatus. And you want to put 2 tablespoons, I believe it is. Yep. 2 tablespoons of lime juice in. So, and this, what this does is it helps ensure that your acidity level is proper. Because your tomatoes, depending on who the maker is, the supplier is, whoever makes your tomato sauce, and all that, it may not be quite acidic enough to can. Now, it also adds a wonderful flavor to your salsa. Almost every salsa has lime juice in it. So I gotta put, got my 4 tablespoons in there for that. And then we gotta mix it up. Just like such. Now, if you're serving this as fresh salsa, you can be done. Let it sit in the fridge for a little bit to, kind of mingle and get to know each other. And like I said, you can half batch this. You can make a full batch. You can double it, triple it. Completely up to you. I always double it. Last year, we went through 48 pints of salsa, and it didn't even make it through the winter. I also give some away. I mean, if anybody wants it, I usually just bring it to them or whatever. They come and get it. Because it is a good salsa, and it goes over well. Alright, so we got that mixed up. Everybody's playing, making friends. So what are we going to do next with this? Alright, so since we're canning it, or at this point if you were serving it like tomorrow, the next day at a party, you would follow the same steps. We're going to take this and we're going to stick it in the fridge overnight, right? So I'm going to put a lid on this. I'm going to stick it in the fridge overnight. And then tomorrow, or like 5 seconds from now for you, we will move on to the next steps, which is just, I lied. We forgot an ingredient. I always do that. Last thing you want to add to it is 1/3 cup of white vinegar. White vinegar. Then mix it up, then put it in the fridge. I don't know why I forgot that, and it slipped my mind. It was sitting right here on the counter, but I did. That vinegar is important. Alright, so, till tomorrow, when we process. I'll see you in a second. Alright guys, it's next morning, and we are moving on to the processing part of, our salsa. So all I got going, just like with the tomato sauce we did last week, we've got our pot on, warming the water up. And I wanted to show you the rack. Remember at the end of the last episode that's a little warm, I was talking about the rack you want to have to separate your jars from the bottom of the pot. Boom, that's it right there. Or something like that. I mean, if you don't have one of those, you bought a pot and didn't have one, you can use the rings for your jars. If you have extra rings, like I got a whole drawer full of rings to do that with. So we got our water on and boiling. We got our salsa over here in the pot, which, show you what it looks like the next day. Right there is our salsa, and it tastes perfect. Now would be a good time to taste it, because it's sat overnight, so all those flavors are blended together. You want to taste it, make sure it doesn't need any more spices, a little more sugar, a little more salt, things of that nature. Remember, you want to do less, maybe a little less in the beginning, and add to it in the long run. And I did that, and we are good to go there. So I'm going to heat this up, and then we'll start processing. All right. Oh, and once you get it heated up and it starts to boil, 10 minutes, slow boil. Just little bubbles here and there. You don't want it raging in the inferno. You just want little bubbles here and there. 10 minutes like that. After that 10 minutes is up, we can start processing. So I'll be right back. All right, our salsa is boiled for 10 minutes at a nice low boil. Our stock pot is steaming with the water in it. So now all we have to do is fill our jars and get them in the water. We'll go ahead and get our jars out of the hot water. Once again, I don't, all my jars, if they're brand new, I'll wash them for sure. Even if they're not brand new. These have been sitting downstairs with lids on them and all that, but I still wash them. And then I put them in scalding hot water. My lids are Ball lids, and Ball doesn't require you to heat them up or sanitize them or anything like that. Just wash them with hot soapy water and let them dry, along with the rings. So in case you didn't know, this is a ring, and that's a lid. And rings are reusable. So once you buy your jars with the lids and rings, you can reuse these until they start to rust. And they will start to eventually rust. They're not made out of the best quality product. So things you will need: pair of tongs. See all that rubber on it? Make sure that's all there. These are what hold your jars. You don't want them to slip and fall. If they start to crack or get missing pieces, get a new set. It's well worth it. You'll need a funnel. And then if you buy the kit, say you're new, it'll come with a stick that shows measurements, or you can actually buy funnels. They're really fancy funnels that got the measurements on the side of them, so you'll know. We lost our stick a long time ago, so I just made one. And yeah, you can see them. And it's got lines on it: 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch. Those are the main measurements you'll need for canning just about anything, although I've never used 3/4 inch. Our salsa, we're going to take it. It's been boiling. It's nice and hot. Our jars are hot. Well, they're not blazing hot, but you want everything to be about the same temperature. The water in your container, your salsa, and your jars. That way you don't run the risk of cracking anything. And we're going to fill these up to a 1/2 inch of headspace. Yeah, which means there's going to be a 1/2 inch between the top of the salsa and the top rim of the jar, which is about a couple cups worth, a little more. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned it earlier, but you're looking at 6 pints or 3 quarts with the ingredients list. And like I said, I doubled mine, so I'll get 12 pints out of this. Go ahead and get that filled. Fill this one up. Such. Get a good measurement on there. 1/2 inch, beautiful. I mean, you will be able to eventually kind of eyeball these to see where they're at. So now that we got our jars full of hot salsa, next thing we want to do, grab a paper towel, or you can use regular towel for that matter. And I'll grab my vinegar. I know last time we did the tomato sauce, I did just use hot water, and you can use hot water, but I went downstairs and got some vinegar, so that way we got a good clean seal. These have got sugar in them, and sugar has a tendency to get sticky, and vinegar will take that off. We're going to wipe our rims down just like that. We're going to take a couple lids, Make sure they're centered on there. I mean, you'll know if they're not, the rings won't go on. We're going to put our rings on, just like doing our tomato sauce. You know, really the only difference between these and the tomato sauce is the amount of product you're putting in the jars. And we're going to put those on finger tight. It's just hot. So, and finger tight means you use your fingers, tighten as far as till it stops. You don't want to sit here and palm it and, you know, give it a bunch of force on it, because then you'll get too tight and it won't be able to let the air out and vacuum it. So once those are done, we'll just stick them in our water as we go. We would normally do this outside. I'm only using one container, but it's raining outside and I don't want to stand out in the rain. All right, we got our first round of 8 in the can. Let's take a look right here real quick. There we are, right down in there. So now what do we have to do to process these? Unlike the tomatoes, they don't take as long to water bath can. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our lid. And we'll get it on there. Just like such. There we go. There we go. Turn that so it's on the burner. And we're going to turn this up. And we're going to crank it all the way to high until it starts boiling. Before I do that, I broke a cardinal rule. I didn't get the water up high enough. So let me get this filled up real quick, and then we'll talk about all the processing. All right, I'll see you back in just 1 second. Okay, so let's try this again. I got the lid back on. My water is, just like the tomatoes, 1.5 to 2 inches above the top of the lids. It's very important. If not, you'll have some just siphoning and all kinds of shenanigans, uneven heating. You'll ruin your product. So I got the lid back on the salsa. I've got it setting on low so that way it stays warm, because I'm not going to be able to do, I couldn't get all 12 containers in there. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, a good rolling boil, I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit so it's not blowing out the top and all that stuff. And I'm going to let this boil for 15 minutes. Once the 15 minutes is up, I'll shut the heat off and I'm going to let it sit in there for another 10. Then we'll be able to pull them out. So when I come back, we'll pull them out and we'll talk about what to do next. All right, see you here in just a second. All right, so we're down to the last step of the day. I went ahead and I got the first batch done. It's right there. There's 2, 4, 6, 8. And we got the second batch, which I only got 3 instead of 4, which happens from time to time right there. And so that gives us 11 instead of 12, which is okay. That happens. Don't ask me why, but even if you go with like a blue book, ball blue book recipe, or a tested recipe from the home preservation website, they don't always work out to be exactly what they say they're going to be. Why? I don't know. It could be humidity, stars aren't aligned. I really don't know. So the last thing we have to do is, let me get you over here to the counter, is we're just going to take these out. Now, just like last time with the tomato sauce, and I'll reiterate, make sure that rubber is in good condition on your tongs. If it's not, the jar could slip out. So when you pull your jars out, no different than before. This is probably one of the more dangerous parts of water bath canning. Water bath canning is good if you've never canned before, but you're going to pull it straight out. We're not going to tilt it to the left or the right, and we're just going to bring it over and set it down. Did you hear the pop? That means that it just sealed. Don't death grip the jars, and you want to grab below the lip line. I'll show you here real quick. You don't want to necessarily grab the lid if you can. Now it's a little harder. That one just popped too. Nice. It's a little harder, but you want to make sure you're grabbing around that lip there and not so much on the can, or on the ring, because if you do and you get a death grip, you'll know it because you'll hear it start to let air out and see. And you can't run the risk of it not sealing. I've never had one do that before, and in the beginning I used to death grip things a lot. So, but we can pull them straight out just like that. Now you notice I had empty jars in there. And if you haven't watched the tomato sauce video yet, the reason for that is the other jars in there keep since I only had 3 jars in there, it keeps those jars from moving around. When the water boils, it can move the jars. But if you've got other jars in there, they don't move. All right, so what do we do now that we've got these sitting out like this? Well, this is the easy part. You walk away from it until tomorrow. You want to let them sit 12 to 24 hours and do their thing. The dinging we heard a couple times, that you're going to listen for that. That means they're sealing. So if you look on this lid here, I don't know if you can really see. Yeah, see that circle right there? That's popped out. Right now it's raised. When they seal, it goes in. See how that's moving in? And it makes a dinging sound. Or a ting. That means it is sealed. So now we just got to let it cool, because right now those things are blazing hot inside there. They're 200 plus degrees. Things are still bubbling inside, and they need time to calm down and get down to room temperature. So we'll let those sit for 12 to 24 hours, and when I come back, it'll be tomorrow. And then we'll do the last like 3-minute process, which is just simply talking about storage and how to label them. All right, I'll see you here in just a second. So it's the next morning. We let these salsas sit for well over 24 hours. So I've been busy. Well, kind of busy. Yeah, I'm on vacation, so I'm relaxing. But I'm busy. I'm relaxing busily, trying to get some stuff done around the house. It's canning season, so I usually take the week off to can. Let's get down here to the counter and we'll talk about what we need to do. So now that they've sitting for their 12 to 24 hours, next thing we're going to do, first thing we're going to do, take off all these rings. All right, now I'm going to check the seal on them. First thing I'm going to do is touch the top, make sure it's not popping, right? And then we're going to hold it just like that. All right, we're going to hold it by the rim. If it'll hold, it's sealed. All right, now, like I said previously, if it isn't holding, I just go ahead and pitch it by this time, because it's been sitting out for an entire day. If you catch it didn't seal, say like the button moved up and down after you checked them after 2-3 hours or whatever, or 6 hours, or it just falls off. Depending on what it is, you could actually just put it in your fridge. This salsa, I'd probably just put it in my fridge if it didn't seal. It'd be good for a day or so, just like leftovers. So the next thing I'm going to do on here is I'm going to write on here what it is, okay? We got the lid cleaned off, dried, and I'm going to write on here that this is salsa, and it's got jalapenos in it. That way I know what it is, because I've got 2 different types of salsa downstairs. I got one that's with hatch chilies, one that's with jalapenos. And then I'm going to write today's date on there, 8/30/22. All right, so now I know when this was made by, or when this was made, and I know what it is. So after I get all those done, I'm going to store them. So where are we going to store them at? Well, we're going to store them in a cooler, dry, I don't want to say dark place, but a darkened place. Place that didn't get a whole lot, if any, sun. Basements are good. Ours goes down in the grocery store. If you don't know what the grocery store is, it's our food pantry down in the basement. I call it the grocery store because there's usually enough stuff down there. It looks like a grocery store. But down there it stays 68 to 72 degrees, and it has very little light to it. There is a window down there in the grocery store, but I keep it covered. That way minimal light gets in. It's got a piece of plastic over it still from the winter time. Well, it's been there since we moved in last fall. That way it's diffused light, and the only real light it ever gets down there is when I turn on the light. So that way it'll optimize its shelf life, which could be, I mean, I've never had salsa last more than like 4 or 5 months, but it could potentially sit down there for a couple years, which is pretty awesome in my book. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these dated and put away, and labeled and put away. And until next week, where I have no idea what we're cooking or baking. I have an idea when we might be baking. My friend Rob sent me a recipe for a pecan cheesecake. And it's pecan pie cheesecake that looks freaking awesome. So we may be doing that. But I still have no idea what we're doing for dinner. So until next week, I love you. I love you very much. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Tell somebody else you love them and that you love them very much. If you make some of this salsa, give them a jar. They'll taste the love in every scoop with their chip. All right? I'll talk to you later. All right? See you next week. Bye.